What's up, Fin fans? Jim Grieshaber, call me Grease, and I have one thing to say to you before we start this show. It is time for the JETS Jets.
Hey, Jeff Zgonina, looking to go 2-0 against the Jets.
Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, and this is a family-friendly program, so I can't tell you what I think of the New York Jets.
Fins up! It's the Dolphins Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphins Squad Show starts now.
What is up, Fin fans? Jim Grieshaber, call me Grease. That is Z, Jeff Zgonina, and the one and only Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins. And I know what Kyle's thinking about when he talks about the JETS, Jets. It's what most of you are probably thinking about. It's what their fans think about when they think of the Dolphins. It's a rivalry game like no other. And it's even more fun considering that both teams have been so bad this year, and the Dolphins did win that first game against the Jets, so you could say, hey, at least we beat the Jets. But now the Dolphins are a completely different team. They've won 3 in a row and 4 out of 5, and here come the Jets looking to spoil that run. But what a show we have in store for you today. First off, real quick, want to take the time to let you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, one of our great sponsors on the network. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. With FanDuel, you see the rundown over there, guys. 3 straight wins. The squad reacts to that. Kyle has some thoughts on the Dolphins shedding their label as a soft team. And as always, Kyle Krabs has numbers to back it up. We look at playoff scenarios. None of them go anywhere without a win against the Jets, obviously. So we break that game down. What matchups are we possibly missing as we put it under the microscope and look at every single thing heading into this game? Z, I'll start with you, man. Another big win for the Dolphins, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't the best win. We spent most of our time breaking down the win, talking about how bad of a win it was, which we tend to do in shows like these. But 3 in a row for Miami and 4 out of 5. We had this circled. We had this in ink. We had this circled for weeks. We've been saying every single week, beat the Jets and get to 6 and 7. Well, now that week is here.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're coming off another good defensive performance. You know, the defense has been playing well in these 3 wins. You know, they've kind of saved the day. You know, the interception on the 2-point conversion, you know, played big. And then, of course, the big 4th down stop, you know, to end the game, to win the game, you know, and to see those young kids inside the interior D linemen playing as well as they have been over this course of this winning streak that we've had here is very impressive.
And Kyle, I think just to pick up on Z's point, because there's always a lot of meat on them bones when Z's done, but I want to, and thanks Z for always leaving me something good. It really is, it speaks to Z's point when you think about the Dolphins and where they are right now, record-wise, right? And the schedule evening out and things like this. But the NFL is such a league of parity right now, man, where you have the Carolina game, you have the Chargers game, you have the Patriots game turn on a special team score. The balls, as you said, for a ball that doesn't bounce, it bounces in weird ways. It's been bouncing the Dolphins' way a lot lately. You know, obviously they got the Falcons when they had some guys banged up. They had obviously the Ravens when Lamar came back and they played them tough for a half. They've had injuries for their opponents. They've had the Bills without guys, and they've still been able to. The Commanders were decimated by injuries, but more so when I look back, the ball's been bouncing their way a lot more. They've been getting the breaks they weren't getting earlier in the year.
Yeah, it's a law of averages, right? You play enough games, you flip the coin enough times, it's going to give you a certain amount of times with tails. It's going to give you a certain number of times with heads. And I think that's a testament where, like, you look at some of these teams that are at the bottom of the draft order right now, or the top of the draft order, if you will. Like, there's 4 teams in the league that have 10-plus losses right now. It's the Tennessee Titans, who are 1-11. It's the New York Giants, who are 2-11. And then the Saints are 2-10, and so are the Raiders. You look at the Dolphins roster relative to what Tennessee's gone through with bad drafting and a bunch of GM changes that have alternated years with head coaching changes. There's just been so much instability with a team like that, or a team like the Saints with how they handled the salary cap with Mickey Loomis. And they've held on to a lot of these contracts for a really long time, and it's forced them to let young players go. The Dolphins have their problems, and they are facing a major salary cap offloading this offseason when it's all said and done. And that's already started this year, but they're not talent deficient in the ways that some of these other teams are across the league. So in a league where there's a lot of parity, it's a very wide open year. It doesn't surprise me that, there's games that you play early in this year and it's like, man, we should have won that one. And then you get to a game you win and you look back and say, and we should have lost that one. And it generally tends to even itself out. I selfishly wish there were more games so we had more to talk about, but realistically, knowing the stresses of the game, you get why the schedule is what it is. And the challenge now is parlaying your momentum into the final 5 games of the season to win as many of them as you can to leave a lasting impression as we get into this next chapter of Dolphins football and who's running it and who's a part of it and who's not.
And that is huge because a lot of people, myself included, have been saying that Mike McDaniel might have saved his job. I mean, you tell me a coach out there who you're going to bring in off the street who's going to get this team to play any harder than he has, Z. I don't care who it is. You get Vince Lombardi and bring him down from the heavens. Don Shula. No coach is going to get this team to play any harder than Mike McDaniel has because he definitely did not lose that locker room. He, if anything, different leaders have been created. Mike has come out this week and praised the leadership of Achane, who we've never heard anything about his leadership. He's not much of a speaker, hasn't been considered much of a team leader. Mike went out of his way to praise him as a leader. So not only has he not lost the locker room, this team has balled out, and they've been playing hard every single week, but now they're starting to get the results with that effort, too, on top of that. I really don't see Mike going anywhere.
No, I don't either. I mean, Kyle just, brought up Tennessee and all their issues that they've had, and you look back and you're like, maybe they should have kept Vrabel, He was a heck of a football coach down there. He won a lot of games for them. He won on some hard times because of, some issues of getting rid of players and drafting bad and whatever. And he goes to New England and look what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not putting, I'm not saying Mike and the two Mikes are on even par or anything, but sometimes you might want to weather the storm, and keep Mike, and get some more pieces for him, and clean up the salary cap issue because it's not going to go away. Whoever comes in here, you're going to have that problem. And Mike's got these guys playing, these young guys playing, these fill-ins playing good football. He's done something right.
Yeah, he sure has. And defensively, Coach Weaver, too, that defense has been flying around, forcing turnovers, holding teams. What do they allow? 17 against New Orleans is the most they've allowed in any of those wins where they've won 4 out of 5, Kyle. So the defense has been ball hungry. They've been at the line of scrimmage just feasting. And we talked about it earlier this year. And it's something that was so bad for Miami that has really changed. And you brought this up before the show. It's your topic. And I just remember saying a few weeks back, the Miami Dolphins are better than this at the line of scrimmage, right? And this ragtag group, and the trade deadline comes and goes, and you kept most of the team intact, kept most of that interior. And even then, everybody's saying, oh, they got to draft along the lines and fortify the line of scrimmage. But you have some numbers and a point that you made pre-show that speaks otherwise. And I thought it was really fascinating. So I'm waiting for you to enlighten me with the audience on this one, Kyle.
Yeah, it's you go back to week 6, right? Week 6 is the game immediately on the heels of Carolina rushes for 20,000 yards against you, and you rush for 19 yards as a team, right? It was as stark and dramatic of a difference on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage as I can remember watching a game in quite some time. It was really demoralizing the way that game unfolded relative to how the Dolphins started and jumped out to a 17-0 lead in the first half. But since that game, it's really interesting to look at how the Dolphins have performed as a team at the line of scrimmage and all of the talking points about how soft the Dolphins are as a team organizationally. And, there's still questions about how they play in big moments and not hurting yourselves and shooting yourselves in the foot and self-inflicted wounds. But if you just isolate line of scrimmage play, right? How do you measure it? You measure it by your success stopping the run and your success in running the football. By EPA, the Dolphins rank 6th in the NFL as the 6th highest EPA output on rushes since week 6 started. So the last 8 weeks of the season, that's half a season sample size. Ranked 6th in rushing EPA. They're 5th in rushing yards, 4th in yards per carry at 5.1. Second in yards after contact per rush. They're averaging 3.5 yards after contact per rush. So that's a testament, not necessarily to the line of scrimmage, but also to the ball carriers themselves and the plays that they're able to make. But it's not just on offense. Defensively, since week 6, when Carolina rushed for all those yards, the game after that till today, they rank second in EPA defending the run. And that includes playing 2 teams in Baltimore and Buffalo that rank in that same period of time as top 8 rushing offenses in the NFL. I mean, from week 6 till today, the Dolphins don't play another team that ranks higher than 22nd in EPA per rush. So their schedule in the last 8 weeks has been harder at the things that they're ranked 6th and 2nd in than the things that the games they're going to play the rest of the way. So they have a very good opportunity here when you talk about parlaying momentum to the finish of the season. You look at how these teams are playing in the areas that the Dolphins are excelling in, and if the trend continues, they're going to have an advantage at the line of scrimmage in a lot of these games left to play.
And Z, I want to get your thoughts on that, because they really did great in that New Orleans games and dominating both sides, right? The run defense has been getting better and better, to Kyle's point as well. And Achane has emerged as one of the biggest stars in the league. But I can't wait to hear your take on this, Z, being a defensive lineman and a defensive line coach, because so much of the line of scrimmage is a mindset, man. And I know you love it that they're winning that battle up front.
Oh, yeah. I mean, wins are always, formulated with a great run offense and a great run defense. You can have all the passes you want in the world and light people up and through the air. You're going to win games. You're not going to win a lot of games. If you have a run game going, especially on offense, it helps your defense out tremendously. I've talked about it before on this show. It gives the guys a break. It's not 3 and out and only 30 seconds off the clock. I've been on those teams, and it's pure hell to go back out there right away after a long drive or whatever. So that, that's been helping us, with getting that run game going. We got a 1,000-yard rusher now, first time in his career, and that helps it. It bleeds that clock. It makes the game smaller. It keeps the big guys on the D line fresh to go out there and stop the run. Because if you can stop the run and make it one-dimensional, you have a great chance of winning, and I wish we'd have played a little better last week in the second half, our pass defense and all that, against the Saints, against that young quarterback. But again, we made one guy try to beat us, and that was the quarterback, and he almost did. But luckily, the defense did, bow up at the end and get the big stop.
And Kyle, to just piggyback more on this, and thank you, big shout out to Building Fins Up in the chat. Helped me with my mic. I think I got my mic sounding a little bit better here. For some reason, every once in a while, it's plugged in the same spot, doing the exact same things, and just decides to go a little haywire on it once in a while. But it's so interesting, the breakdowns you've talked about so many times, Kyle. In the Patriots game, it was a special teams breakdown. Against the Chargers, it was a breakdown in the secondary. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, even though their numbers weren't good early in the season, even though some teams had huge games against them running the ball, and the Dolphins took a while to create that identity and step into that identity for themselves as a running team, the breakdowns weren't coming at the line of scrimmage, right? The mistakes that were costing them games, they were coming from their quarterback. Obviously, in the Colts game, that was mostly Tua. The Patriots game was a breakdown on special teams, right? The Chargers game, a couple of breakdowns in the secondary late, allowing Herbert to make incredible plays. And if you could have one game back, that'd be the game, the Chargers game for sure. But, the group up front, once they got past that uncertainty, and we were all questioning it at the deadline, going back and forth, should they have traded more guys? Should they have done more? The younger guys in the middle have really stepped up. And to your point, you said this weeks ago, Kyle, here on this show, the midweek edition, giving those young guys a chance to prove that they belong in the NFL can go miles toward a team's performance. You get some hungry dogs out there.
Yeah, it's you watch Jordan Phillips getting up after making a play at the line of scrimmage. You watch how excited Zeke Biggers is every time he makes a tackle. He's made 10 tackles the last 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. You see the energy of those guys, the enthusiasm which they're playing with, and that is kind of permeating across the entire defense. Like you see how the guys are interacting with each other, and the Dolphins, they have the sideline footage of these guys all dapping each other up and getting fired up when they make plays and being happy for each other and being engaged with one another. And specifically those young guys that are stepping into roles and being given opportunities. And regardless of what the final outcome of this season is from a win-loss record, and regardless what the decision-making is for kind of the football operation, this is what you want, because these are young guys that are under contract for 3-4 more seasons potentially. And to have them getting these reps, getting better, being energetic and enthusiastic while trying to climb back to 500. Imagine like what it is if you're in a playoff hunt, right? And what the energy is like. It's guys that are here for the right reasons because they love ball, and it's guys that are showing the ability to apply themselves through adversity and get better. And you'd like to think these individuals, and then whatever remnants of the group survives into a new season. Mike likes to talk about how 40% of your roster is turned over every single year. Would love to see that number get smaller for a couple of seasons, and I think that would help us. Them going through this, you have the chance to come out the other side of it better.
And that definitely helps whoever comes in next year in whatever capacity, right? And everybody just assumes it's going to be a new GM, and now more and more people are thinking Mike McDaniel is going to be here as the head coach. We go more into this on the other side. The job Mike McDaniel has done this year with this team. Get Z's thoughts, Kyle's thoughts deeper on that. The coaching staff as a whole. Who are some of those younger players or backups that you guys wanted to see get out there? Hit us up in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. Who are some of the people and players on this team who have impressed you the most with the way that they've stepped up, or the coaching staff? Could be anybody and anything that you've seen or heard from this team over these past few weeks. And then, of course, we turn the corner into the Jets game, the rivalry game. The records don't matter. The fans hate each other. You know, it's a big, big game for the Dolphins in so many ways for so many reasons, but they just have to keep that win streak going. We get into all that and more, all kinds of things still coming your way on your squad show. It's Grease, it's Z, it's Kyle. But first, step aside, tell you about a new sponsor here on the network, Aura Frames. Oh, there we go. Hold on, Z. Z stuck his little spot on my screen does not want him to be off. Whoever he's paying, his media team, they got something going on. They're better than Diddy's media team, I can tell you that. Oh man, the holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. I'm hunting gifts, and if it's something meaningful that you want to get, personal, guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. Take it from me, Grandpa over here. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Or just think of the pranks you can play on people with this thing. You get to pick the pictures that they get, right? Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos. You get endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame, so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's open. I'm getting this for my mom for Christmas. It's a wrap right now, but it's not wrapped because it's going to be shipped. How about that? Packaging comes gift ready. No price tag, no wrapping needed. A huge win for me and everybody like me. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer. She better not throw pictures of her grandkids in the drawer. And for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames. That's right, Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's Aura Frames, AURA Frames.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. There we go. I needed some of a different kind of frame to finish that spot. Some glasses up in here. Good Lord. There we go. And this one should play anytime. There. That was only about 14 seconds late. But we're working it out. It's the holiday season, guys. And that's Z, that's Kyle, I'm Grease. And Aura Frames, man, think about it. You could frame the three of us like they have us right here on the screen. Send your favorite.
I love about that.
Oh man, I'll tell you what though, it is Jets week, and you can tell always when the New York media is involved in anything, and they just I'm convinced that they just hate life now in New York, and football has been so bad. They don't have a football team, first of all, except the Buffalo Bills, but they still have two that call themselves New York. And I'm trying to make fun of the Jets here, Kyle, but they do a good enough job on their own. I don't really need to dig too deep into my bag to toss some shade on the Jets this year, and really not a good football team. They stockpiled a lot of picks for the future, is what the fans and people are hanging their hats on. But I have seen a lot of improved effort under Coach Aaron Glenn, and one place I've really noticed it is the Jets are really good on special teams.
Yeah, they you go back to Tampa Bay and how they nearly pulled off an upset earlier in the year against Tampa Bay with a big special teams play before Baker Mayfield ran the 2-minute offense opportunity. I think it was his third or fourth in as many weeks to go down and win the football game. But this team's a team that's going to play hard, right? And if you come in expecting the Jets to just kind of roll over, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed. Now, I think they are at a talent deficiency with Garrett Wilson's on injured reserve, so he's not going to play in this game. You think about the trades of Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner and what that means for the defensive depth chart. And it's year one with a new coach. They're really trying to get these guys energized and fired up and buying into the messaging. And you've seen that. The guys that are playing hard. But I think if you don't beat yourself in a game like this and you let it play out for 60 minutes, with those rosters that we talked about earlier, about there are certain rosters that just have deficiencies. And I don't think the Dolphins are in that category. I think especially after some of the personnel moves the Jets have made, you're in different tiers. And it's up to you to not give the Jets life. They're going to play hard. You got to weather the early storm. But after that point, I expect if you show up the way you're supposed to, that the talent deficiencies that the Jets have will manifest themselves across this game the longer it goes.
I like the way he put that, Z. The talent deficiencies the Jets have will manifest themselves as this game unfolds. I mean, that's pretty good. That's why they call you GM, Kyle, in there in the chat. But seriously, man, that's just a fancy way of saying give them time and they'll beat themselves.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a divisional game, so it's always going to be a tough matchup, no matter what the teams look like. You know, it's a division game. You know, like we played Buffalo tough both games. You know, for the most part, it's divisional games. You know, so it doesn't matter if there are deficiencies or whatever. It's a divisional game. We got to go out there. We got to go out and play solid, good defense. Again, get turnovers. Don't turn the ball over. You know. Hope Tua doesn't throw his 15th interception. You know, that's always going to every game now. You know, hopefully he plays smart and puts the ball in the right spots on time. You know, and we get the ball moving. You know, we got Waller back, get him more reps, you know, this game, you know, coming off the injury finally. You know, another target for Tua, you know, and then the defense has got to stop the run and get after, you know, Taylor, you know, because it feels anymore. We're about him really running. You know, I mean, Taylor can run, but not like Fields. Fields is a legit running quarterback who can go. You know, he's burned me a few times in my coaching career. You know, so he's not in there. So we got to, you know, but I think Taylor's got a better arm than Fields. You know, and knows to get the ball there. You know, where he needs to go. We got to shut him down, and we got a chance.
What are your thoughts to piggyback on what Z said, Kyle, about Taylor versus Fields?
Yeah, I think it gives them a certain floor in the passing game that they did not have the first time that we played this team. And you remember Miami defensively really had a strong pulse on the Jets the first time around in week 4. And then Fields takes a busted play on a 4th down, in which was going to be a tackle for a loss for 3 yards. And he pivots back and comes all the way back across the field and makes a 50-yard touchdown out of it on what was a broken play on 4th down that was going to be a turnover on downs. Tyrod's not going to beat you like that. But he's also going to, if you run slant flat and the flat's open, he's going to throw it to the flat within the timing of the play. So that's where your execution, it's going to be stressed in a little different way than it was the first time you played the Jets. But again, with no Garrett Wilson, I think you don't have a player that talent-wise is going to force Miami to kind of warp and distort their coverage shells. You should be able to feel comfortable in your ability to space the entire width and depth of the field without a game-breaking player on the perimeter or somebody in the slot. Oh, they've got some talent. You know, Mason Taylor is a young tight end, really physically gifted player, but he's not going to change the math of your pass defense the way that Garrett Wilson would. So I think you have to be prepared for low depth of target passes, a lot of the ball coming out on time. We're going to operate and execute the passing offense as it's designed. You got to come up, rally, and tackle. You can't miss tackles in this game because that's going to give them life. And then as the field compresses, or if the Jets make a mistake and get into a long and late down situation, that's when I think you can really be aggressive against the Jets and kind of dare Tyrod to make big-time throws down the field, or alternatively, you can let him take the completion underneath, rally up, and force a punt after a short completion short of the sticks.
Yeah, and they allowed 38 points to the Bengals. What a crazy game that was on the road. back on October 26th, but since then they haven't allowed 30. Their defense has been getting better. They have some unsung heroes on that defense side of the ball. The fans are starting to take to New York, and the Jets are starting to feel like they have enough pieces to build around in the draft. And you start thinking about guys who could be there for the future. And one guy in particular was Breece Hall. Wasn't happy that he wasn't traded, but he's a guy that they could build around long term. And you talked about Garrett Wilson, obviously, is a guy that they could build around long term as well. But the thing about the Jets is they're very good at the plays that change games. Like you mentioned, Kyle, special teams. We talked about them scoring on special teams, opportunistic on defense, the way the Dolphins have been lately. And to Z's point earlier, he said that the Dolphins can't go in there and make the mistakes that they made early in the year when they were losing those games, because even the game they beat the Jets was close, right? It wasn't a blowout. It was their best uniforms of the season. And it was the Darren Waller game, if I remember correctly, right? Kyle, it was the first time he played, and he had a couple of touchdowns in that game.
Yep, that's right. It was kind of the unleashing of him, and
yeah,
he didn't get a lot of volume, but he made the most of his 3 catches because he got 2 touchdowns out of it. And one of those was that throw the ball at the crossbar and let Waller go up and elevate and get his feet down in bounds. And we haven't seen that version of Waller in, obviously there's the IR stint there, but the game in Cleveland, the game against Carolina after the first half where he had that big pass up the seam. He has a big catch on the sideline on a busted coverage this past week in Miami's win against the Saints, but we haven't seen the red zone threat of Waller. We had the target where I thought he probably could have played the ball a little differently, how Tua put it. I don't think Tua put it in the best place on the one that Waller caught, but came down out of bounds by a couple of feet. So you had a near miss in that regard, but this is the kind of matchup we have proof of concept of Waller being a really productive player in the red zone, and Tua needs somebody that is going to be that accuracy eraser and kind of, I'm just going to trust him to make a play, put it in the vicinity and trust him, right? Because he's struggling in some phases right now. A guy like that can help you get into a rhythm by just putting it in the catch radius and letting him make the play. So I'm hopeful we get another big performance out of Darren Waller. I think it could help him more ways than one.
Yeah, and this is a whole can that we just opened. We'll go into the next segment with this because it's Tua time, guys. We should have a little bell or something, that little reminder that comes in with a graphic. Ding, ding, it's Tua time. But Tua played a Tua-like game against the Jets when the Dolphins beat him earlier this season. And what I mean by that is a game that he has played this year when he's been at his best and the team's been at their best, meaning he minimizes mistakes. And he was 17 out of 25 for $177 and a couple of touchdowns. So that's the stat line we need from Tua, game in and game out. And then just to kind of piggyback on that, Z, with Kyle's point, having that whoopee, that security blanket. My kids, all 3 of them had that little blanket in the stroller with them, right? And they'd scream if they didn't have it. That's a tight end to a quarterback in the NFL. I mean, that's your security blanket. That's your number 1 check down. That's your guy who's tall and big and athletic, and you can throw it up for him, like Kyle said. And the tight end around the league has always been that for a quarterback. And Tua hasn't had that for most of the year. And then the other part of that, Z, is you have a top-level tight end in Waller, but has Waddle kind of dipped a little bit and has the dust settled on that number 1 receiver talk, Jalen Waddle?
No, I mean, again, Waller's going to help Waddle. To keep the safety in the middle of the field. You got to protect that part of the field, and that's what we've been missing. That's what Waddle's getting double coverage on the outside all the time. And, when we're throwing 50-50 balls out there, we're more of not a 50-50 ball, but that's what they're thinking it is, because that safety's floating over there fast. You have Waller down the seam, safety can't do that. He's got to, honor Waller in the middle of the field, because Waller can still run away from a lot of these linebackers, and safeties in this league, because he is a heck of an athlete when he's healthy, So that's just only going to help us, in the pass game.
Kyle?
Yeah, I think
on the Waddle thing in particular, your thoughts on him.
So he had 2 weeks of reduced production, but he had 2 drops that were kind of goofy drops against Washington. So that kind of is what it is. And when you watch the film against the Saints, Brandon Staley kind of came in with a plan that we're going to do what Z said. We're going to put somebody over top of him and play physical and roll the safety to that side. And we're going to put a bracket on him. And Look, there were times in 2024 where Miami had both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the field at the same time, and you'd cloud up and press and play safeties over the top, and they had the same issue. So I'm not surprised that a team came out and did a good job of executing. And I think the adjustment for Mike McDaniel is make sure Waddle is able to get off the ball, put him in more bunches, put him in more stacks, give him more motions to release him at the line of scrimmage. And if you catch a team doing that to you, let him be a player that gets put in motion to help alleviate some of that pressure by allowing him to be in motion at the snap. And I think it's a little bit easier to do that when you don't have two of those toys at the same time that you're trying to figure out who's going to be the primary progression guy. How do we want to move what guy? How are we going to let the other guys stay static? It makes it simpler for you to make that decision. So I didn't necessarily, Waddle had one where Tua had the color flash in front of his face, and he ended up sliding off his spot, but then eating the sack. If we don't take the L on the inside there and fail to pass off the twist game with the two defensive tackles, Waddle's got an explosive play, and he's up, and Tua could have got that ball up and down. He probably gets another 40, 45 yards on the day, and then he's at 85 yards again, and everybody wouldn't bat an eye at 4 catches for 85 yards, and it's another 20-plus yard receiving performance from him. They just haven't hit that vertical shot, and that's one thing with Waddle, whether it's been catch and run over the middle of the field or they have been more opportunistic to get a single high safety and get to the top of the drop. And we're going to go gun 3 with a hitch and get the ball up and down within 30 yards on some vertical plays and hit some vertical shots down the sideline. We haven't seen that in the last couple of weeks, and that's part of just, I think, this evolving. Teams are kind of catching up to what you're doing with the passing game, but I haven't seen Waddle fall off and not win routes. It's just, okay, in the instances where we had some explosives, the rest of it didn't tie together to allow us to hit.
Let's keep our OC hats on when we come back after the break. We're going to keep talking about this Miami Dolphins offense. And I feel like Mike McDaniel, the offensive coaching staff, and Tua, obviously getting a guy like Waller back, that's a huge addition to a team that's making a push to try to make the playoffs. And just the things you can run with him that you just can't do without him. And then you have the other guys and their unique skill sets that they can go back to now. And you talked about Dulcich, showing a couple flashes here and there, Kyle, as well. So the weapons are there. They look a lot different than they did under the tree when Tyreek Hill was one of them, and you had that shiny red paint job on the sports car. But this offense has really been productive lately with Achane being the focal point. We picked that up on the other side. First, Kyle is going to tell you about FanDuel, and we will keep on rolling with your Dolphin Squad on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network, and, of course, your team every day.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. We were looking for that one big Jalen Waddle play this past weekend, and we didn't get it. But this week against Jets, Waddle usually does pretty well. It's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot, when a defense tightens up, or when momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into each moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in on every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season down the home stretch, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long with FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you.
There we go. All right, guys. So I have to clean my screen or something. I have the touch screen, and you tap the touch screen. Z's won't work anymore. The touch screen. There must be. You
need the stylus.
I need to do something.
The little pen.
The little pen. There we go.
Yeah, just knock it that way. See if that.
What I need? I need this guy to come back and play quarterback. Where is he? That's what I need. I need that guy to come back and play quarterback. Even now, at his age, I'd take him over Tua. I don't know. But
I don't know.
You never know. No, and of course, I'm being facetious about Dan Marino, but he was so great. You get spoiled with one like that. Go talk to the Chiefs fans in about 30 years after they have a bunch of guys when they replace Mahomes, how rare it is and how tough it is to replace a guy like that. And the Dolphins have never had one since then. And very few teams have had a Dan Marino, to be real. But Tua doesn't have to be Dan Marino, Z. Tua doesn't have to be Dan Marino. He doesn't have to be Bob Greasy. He doesn't have to be any of those guys, just like Achane doesn't have to be Larry Zonka or Mercury Morris. But the game has changed. It's adapted. I like the way the Dolphins came in with the sports cars. You're thinking they have all these weapons. They're going to throw the ball down the field. They hung 70 in a game. And the way that the coaching staff, and I'll start with Mike, has adapted. Nobody thought Tua was going to go off this cliff. Nobody. I mean, maybe a couple of guys, national media guys taking a shot. Hey, we'll throw that out there. And if it hits, I look like a genius. Maybe. But no one saw this crash coming, and no one saw it coming so quickly and so abruptly to a guy who missed half the year last year, who all of a sudden can't play anywhere near his former capability, even if a lot of it's between the ears. But he doesn't have to be great. He doesn't even have to be a Pro Bowl quarterback to win with this team, because they have shown these past few weeks with the running game, with Achane, now you get Waller back. They have shown that they can be a ball control team that beats you by moving the chains and stopping you from moving them when you have the ball on offense. So to me, there's a lot of credit deserved there for changing the whole entire philosophy on the go and going from everything you wanted to do and the whole direction you thought you were going to a completely different direction, spotlighting a completely different player and a whole different style of football.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mike made a big change, losing 10. When 10 went down, we had to do something different. We didn't have to give him his touches now. We didn't have to keep him happy. So we went to the running game. And that's Mike's bread and butter was, again, that's the tree he comes from. That's the bread and butter is the running game. You set up everything else off the running game. And we did that, or Mike did that, and we started having success, so you hate to see a great player go down that helps your offense, but sometimes it helps a little bit now, because we were struggling, we couldn't get it going. And once we got that run game going, everything was clicking, the pass game opened up a little bit more. We got Waller involved when he, the first go around. I hope we get him, around again. And, we keep moving the ball that way. We just got to limit the turnovers. That's the main thing for that offense. Don't put Tua in bad situations where he's got to throw it downfield. Just take what they're giving, the defense is giving you, and move the ball methodically. Take long drives. You don't have to be flashy. You don't have to be like one and dones, with touchdowns. I don't want one and dones on turnovers, of course, but, just keep shrinking the clock. Keep the clock low, make it, if it's got to be a tight game, it's a tight game, because the defense is playing really good football, getting turnovers, stopping the run. We just need to get after, the quarterback a little bit better, and on passing downs, but it'll come. I got faith in those young cats. They're playing well, and Zach's, playing a lot better football week in and week out up front, of course, and, just get those outside edge guys to get some more pressure, and we'll be all right.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing about Tua and about the offense, Kyle, to you. He's had 4 games this year where he has not thrown an interception. The Jets game was one of them. And all 4 of them, he was really good, and he was what they need him to be. The one game that they lost where he didn't throw a pick was Carolina, and they were in a position to win that game. He put them in a position to win that game. And if I remember correctly, they scored late on the Dolphins defense after Tua had gone down and given the Dolphins the lead. So 4 games this year, he has not thrown an interception. He's cleaned up the turnovers tremendously. I've seen a couple more sacks taken these last couple of weeks, Kyle, and that always makes me nervous, given Tua with his concussions and things like that. But again, he doesn't have to be Superman. He doesn't need to wear a cape. He can be Brock Purdy. He can be 17 of 25 for 199 yards and a couple touchdowns if he's not turning the ball over. And you get these guys the ball in space. And I would say that Achane's a big reason why the passing game got going, because he's such a dual threat. But now you bring back Waller, that whole middle of the field that was gone is there for Tua. So he can, and we saw in the last game a throw he made to Waddle in traffic that he can make those throws still. So I think there's a lot to work with here. I think a lot of it's mental. But I'm curious, because you want to beat the guy up. You want everybody in the chat rooms. Everybody wants to beat him up, talk radio. But you need him to be okay mentally. So it's a lot of pressure on Tua. I just hope he's not putting a lot more on himself to think he has to be great when he doesn't.
Well, I think he said it when he signed his contract, right? Like, heavy is the crown. And when you enter into this stratosphere, it comes with that extra scrutiny. And he was already scrutinized as a rookie contract player before he got a second contract. But I certainly think there's been an adjustment for him this season in particular, as far as hit mitigation and trying to be selective and not putting yourself in harm's way. I appreciate that he took that to heart, because it was something that realistically it in some ways, your flaws last year would have still been flaws, and you would have had to reconcile them at some point in the season. But, Tua going down with the 4 weeks on injured reserve probably cost you a playoff spot last year when it was all said and done, if you just retroactively look at it. So that was the messaging this offseason. He seems to have taken to it. Do I think in some ways it negatively impacts the confidence and the instinctiveness in which he plays with at times? Yeah, I do. It's part of the challenge of kind of unpeeling this onion that is this complicated situation on what's the best way to go forward until you have that opportunistic opportunity to make a transition and start this whole process over again, which is not on the immediate radar. So you understand we got to make it work. I think one thing that's worth mentioning for me, this was another story. I did this story for A to Z Sports earlier this week. The one area statistically in which Tua has dramatically fallen off is on long and late downs. Third and fourth down and 8 or more yards to go. In his first 3 seasons under Mike McDaniel, he had passer ratings of 98.9, 92, 97, and then 85 this past season in 2024 on long and late downs. So those are passer ratings between 85 and 98 passer rating. It's strong considering it's an obvious passing situation. This year it's 63. And since the start of the 2024 season, he's tied for the league lead in interceptions, but 5 of his 7 interceptions that he's thrown on long and late downs since the start of the 2024 season have come in instances in which Tyreek Hill's not been on the field. And obviously this has been a big thing this year because Tyreek Hill goes down 3.5 games into the season. So multiple things can be true. I think the departure of Tyreek Hill has created a better, healthy balance of personnel usage and diversification, specifically on early downs and in your run game and what that means, because he's getting paid $30 million. If he's available, he's going to be on the field, right? And if you've got a $28 million wide receiver and a $30 million wide receiver, you're not going to live in a lot of 13 personnel and have one wide receiver on the field because somebody's getting paid $28+ million is not going to be playing on the field. So I think that's opened you up on the early downs. But where you feel Tyreek's absence the most this year is on those obvious long and late downs. Because when we talk about Garrett Wilson and him being on injured reserve for the Jets and not having a player that's going to warp your coverage and your spacing on the back end, the Dolphins did play those 2 guys 10 and 17 off of each other, and it created more space in obvious passing situations because everybody played you off. You don't have that with both guys this year. And you weren't prepared to replace Tyreek Hill because you committed to roll it back with him this year. So now you're trying to, in season, without having a succession plan in place for a speed receiver opposite Jalen Waddle, Tua's got tighter windows. You got to drive throws with more velocity. You got to anticipate things faster because the spacing is smaller because you only have 1 receiver to warp the coverage instead of 2. So as we figure out where this is going to go with Tua and how long it's going to go there, if it's me, I'd have moved on from Tyreek Hill this past offseason. I understand there were some complications with that because of his contract and the guarantees, and he had the wrist surgery and the headlines off the field and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you can find a cost-effective alternative with a threat of vertical speed that you're not going to be beholden to play 80% of the snaps because he's getting $30 million, who when you get in 3rd and 8, a team's going to say, hey, we at least have to respect this guy might get over the top of us. And I think that's something to put on your list for the Dolphins this offseason. And for the next 5 weeks, we just got to figure it out. And the best way to figure it out is to avoid being in 3rd and 4th down and 8 yards to more or more.
That's a great point. And to that point, Kyle, people have been clamoring for a receiver with size, with strength, with that durability, right? And you think of a guy out of nowhere. I remember when it happened to Rondé Gadsden. I'm sold. His son's in the league. And we just talked about Mason Taylor. And I remember when Jason Taylor came in. But, when you think about that position and the ability to move the chains, the ability to make catches in traffic, the ability to throw a dang fade up in the air in the corner of the end zone, which they haven't had for a lot of this year. It almost makes you think like Waddle's good in that one slot, and they should really be looking for a durable possession receiver to go along with Waddle and Waller next year. And that's a big assumption on Waller, obviously. But, I mean, just imagine a possession-type receiver, a big dude who moves the chains, you know, and then you put him in that mix with Waddle and then Waller and then Achane coming out of the backfield. That's pretty right there. I'd take that. I'd win some games with that group.
I think for me, you see the trend across the league. The teams that are able to go multiple tight end stuff, the Rams, they flipped the switch. They were 11 personnel 95% of the time under Sean McVay. This year, halfway through the season, they said, forget 11 personnel. We want to play 13 personnel. They play 13 personnel like 60% of the time now. It's either 11 or 13. And they just used their first-round draft pick on a player that's a big-body player that you were just talking about with receiving skills in Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. The teams that can put you in a conflict in, we want to match your personnel, but we're not athletic enough to match your size. So whether that's big receivers, whether that's flex tight ends like a Darren Waller type, like somebody in the draft, whatever. I think those are the teams that are going to create the biggest headaches for opposing defensive coordinators over the next couple of seasons because of the trend of jumbo sets. Everybody's playing in base nickel now. Everybody wants to play smaller with 5 DBs on the field. Okay, then we're going to load up or we're going to mash you. Good luck. Win at the catch point or stop us in the run game with 5 DBs. That, for me, whether it's big receivers or tight ends, I don't care where it comes, but I'd like a speed alternative for Tyreek Hill, and I want to get bigger. I want to get more multi-tight end stuff with guys that you can trust to play 17 games because that's unfortunately not Darren Waller having retired last year. But that for me is the pathway for success in the NFL the next couple of years.
I can't wait to get your thoughts on that, Z. We're going to take a quick break and come back and wrap up this Dolphin Squad show. Z is going to pick right up where Kyle left off in this conversation. It's Grease, it's Z, it's Kyle. It's your Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network. All right, wrapping it up on the Squad Show. Z, I want to come right to you because before the break there, Kyle made some outstanding points, as he always does, about the draft, about the direction the team's going in. And, you know, we saw all the sports cars. We saw the cheetah. We saw everything at the beginning of the year. The Dolphins may have just created their offense for the future that's going to carry them toward where they want to go by accident because of the injury. And how many times have you seen that in the National Football League from Tom Brady right on down, how an injury can just change everything, can change the philosophy. Coach is doing it on the fly. But, you know, which game was it when they started with the jumbo package? I can't remember. They had a tight end out, and it was the Atlanta game.
Atlanta, yeah.
Atlanta was the first one, right? And I remember you talking about it at that point, Z. What a dimension that gives them. And to Kyle's point, they've just been beating teams up.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, every year the coaches, you know, you look and you see what offenses or what defense and what was working for them. So, you know, people are going to study the Rams, right? People studied Detroit, right, over the previous years, and they were big. You know, Ben Johnson, big 2 tight end guy. He brought it to Chicago. There, you know, numerous times you look on there, 12 personnel or 13 personnel, you know, kind of like the Rams. So you're going to see that swing again, you know, every year. Like I said, the off-season studies, you know, it comes up, you know, oh, this was working. The run game's working. You know, you're going to get more power runs, I guarantee you now, because of some of the DNs that are out there are smaller guys. They're not all Myles Garrett like in the past, you know. They're smaller outside linebacker types. You're going to see some more of that smash mouth, putting, you know, 2 tight ends out there to beat up on those smaller defensive ends and to run the ball. And, you know, and then these tight ends are getting to be like hybrid receivers, you know, and it's hard for a linebacker to cover some of these cats, you know, coming off the line, you know, and stay with them. You know, so now you get to bring a bigger safety in to cover them. Now, okay, you bring in a bigger safety, like Kyle said, even if it's big nickel, I'm still going to smash you with the run now because these tight ends are bigger, faster, stronger dudes, you know. So the game keeps evolving, you know, and I like to see that, you know, get back to the run game, get back to real football, you know, not this 7-on-7 crap that's out there now, you know. Most kids are playing, you know, in grammar school. There's no more linemen, you know, and that's what wins games is, you know, the linemen. Yeah, I toot my own horn, Grease.
A couple of years ago, they tried to cancel the running game out of the NFL completely. Guys weren't getting paid. They undervalued the running back, and that quickly turned back around, Kyle. And you look at Achane, right? For example, this is not your Ricky Williams running league anymore anyway, right? When the Dolphins were bashing Ricky's brains in 34 carries a game or whatever it was, 31 you always remember it's like the fish you caught. Remember when Ricky carried it 100 times a game? It felt that way.
383 carries in a season.
383 and
oh no, Dave loved running the ball because I was on those teams.
Oh, you were, Z, and I'll tell you this: he loved running Ricky Williams into the ground. But with Achane, he has 65 carries in the last 3 games to get the 428 yards. He's at 21, 22 carries a game, putting up numbers like that. Now, obviously, those cartoon-like numbers aren't going to continue on 22 carries, and if they do, more power to him. But you don't need to run the ball 30-plus times to get those numbers. And then, Kyle, you get the change of pace with Gordon, and then I like what they've been doing with Jalen Wright as the season's been going on. Here and there, they hit a play to him, 7-8 yarder, kind of working him in, giving the opposing coaches more to think about. I don't think they're done incorporating him more into the offense, Kyle, either. So I just think it's really exciting when you think about what they have here as an offensive identity. I know the O-line room loves it because you tell those lunch pail guys they're just going to run it 30-plus times, but that seems to be the number, right? It's not Achane running it 30 times, but it's the Dolphins running it 30 times. That seems to be their magic number.
Yeah, it's been a really consistent common thread across all their success, and in some games they have a little bit more success with the zone schemes, and it really feels like that's the bread and butter for Achane because of how quick-footed he is and how slippery he is, and he can kind of process if there's a cutback lane, he can get to it fast where Jalen Wright probably can, but his vision wasn't consistent as a rookie, and now he's kind of got caught behind Ollie Gordon early in the season when he got banged up, and Ollie's a little bit more like the downhill, the power scheme. We want to attack a gap. We want you to hit the gap with a full head of steam. And I think one thing to not totally overlook, having watched the film, is Austin Jackson's ability to create displacement up front is going to even more compound that strength that they have. He's a force multiplier in that regard. We're getting Cole Strange getting move on guys in double teams. And that was not the case when you get Cole Strange on a base block, or if you got him trying to work up to a backer on the second level. You don't get a lot of movement on those combos, but on more than one time when Austin Jackson's stepping in and you got a 3 technique and he's stepping down to work down and up, he's ejecting defensive linemen several yards off their spot. And if he can stay out there the rest of the season, and I know that's a huge qualifier for Austin because he's missed half the season in the last 2 years, and he missed almost all of Mike McDaniel's first season here in 2022. I think he played like 60 snaps in 2 games and missed 15. I know it's a huge qualifier, but it can really send this thing to another level and allow all these backs to get rolling, whether you want to come downhill and play gap scheme, or you want to run inside zone, you want to run outside zone, you want to run your exotics.
It really is. And the way that they're playing, and Z, I want to get your thoughts, right? Because these guys being the young guys, and I think Patrick Paul has really elevated his game this year. Obviously, he had to, but he's become a force out there. And that whole left side, the young guys, these last 2 drafts, and I see them week in and week out getting more confident. They're running behind them more and more in big situations, and that looks like it could be an anchor. And I don't want to go crazy and say Richmond Webb, Keith Sims, or anything like that. But you know what I mean? When you have a particular side of an offensive line and you can feel like you have it set for years with building blocks, they're showing that right now.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I know old linemen, they'd rather go forward than backwards. So they would rather run the ball than pass the ball because it's hard to be backpedaling and try to block somebody. You get some of these, like, I'm always going to say Myles Garrett. I mean, he made a really good tackle last week look foolish, on a few plays, out there, big 71 from San Francisco, right? Trent Williams. So you'd rather go forward and block a guy in a run game than pass block, and these guys are, they play together. They know each other, they get a feel for each other. They don't want to help a guy, they know just the little ins and outs, all trust, with each other when you play a lot. And every week it's getting better and better and better up front, on the O-line, because these guys are starting to play together. It's not, a new guy, another new guy, a guy hurt, new guy, guy. So, the side that's been, solidified, the longest, you get a feel. You don't have to make calls because the call already, so you keep everything quiet, no tips for the D lineman, and then you go on and play ball.
And Kyle, they're both second-round picks, very, very highly regarded second-round picks these last couple of drafts, and Patrick Paul and then Jonah on that side. So they obviously really felt the need to invest in that offensive line. It's starting to pay off, and I have it. You guys noticed that the last couple of games, especially, more runs to the left when it's 3rd and 1 or 4th down, and we didn't see a lot of that early in the year, Kyle.
Yeah, it was like that was the good group in preseason and in training camp. The training camp reports says, all their good runs came to the left. And then you get in the games and Jonah kind of showing some of his inexperience and losing reps early by not getting hands on guys. But very quietly, I think his best 2 games of the season have been the last 2 games that he's played at left guard. And I know, the book on guys on social media for their first 3 years in the league is written by their first 4 games they play as rookies, but he's coming along a little bit there. Jonas Vainai at left guard. And you think about Brewers under contract for 2026. I'd be getting on whoever they hire at GM. Brewer said in the interviews leading up to the Madrid game, he wants to finish his career in Miami. I think you got a really easy first swing at a contract extension. Lock that dude in on a contract. Make sure he's not in a contract year in 2026, because the way he's been playing for 2 years in Miami, he's one of the better centers in football. I think it gets taken for granted because of the soft stereotype around Miami, and he's a smaller center. But you know who else was not a big center? Jason Kelce. And I'm not saying that he's Jason Kelce, but you put power players next to him that are stable players. He's had bad guard play for his first year and a half here, and he's still been a sensational player. So you think about him, you think about Jonah on the rookie contract, you think about Patrick Paul having 2 years left on his deal, and you start craving stability and, maybe a little bit too late, little too late as far as getting this group reinvigorated with new blood. And I think some of your team building decisions that led up to Chris Grier being dismissed kind of spread you too thin. But I think you're going to see this group settle in, and I'm excited to see what it does look like, because as we talked about earlier in the show, like it's the last 8 weeks, this unit's been very effective. It's been impactful. It's been happening with multiple backups until this past game. You got 4/5 of your starting offensive line out there against New Orleans. It was cool to see. When's the last time we said that? In a late November, December game for the Dolphins? So just letting it play out. But, when you talk about what this roster needs and what the future holds and, kind of building moving forward, I think you look at this offensive line group, it's not a finished product. Austin Jackson's durability issues at right tackle are well established, and James Daniels played 3 snaps for you. You're going to have to figure that out because he's got 2 years left on his contract. But you got building blocks here, and you can build with this group, and I'm excited to see how it all comes together.
Yeah, and on the flip side, Z, I know you love the D-line. You're a defensive line coach, defensive lineman. Let's break down the other side of that, because we started the show talking about the Dolphins kind of shedding that soft label, and Kyle made a great point about both sides of the line of scrimmage. We just hit that on the offensive side with the way those linemen are playing, but what about those big dogs up front on D?
Yeah, I mean, they're young, right? We got like maybe 4 or 5 guys in the first 2 years of their careers up front playing. They're playing good football, and they're getting better and better every week, And you got the old guy, Zach, he's bringing them along, and Chubb's, playing good football. He's getting his pressures, he's missed a few sacks, but it comes with the territory. He's been hurt quite a bit, but it's good to see him still out there on the grass playing, and giving good quality reps, and helping those young guys. Kyle talked about earlier in the show about the enthusiasm on the sidelines. Chubb's one of the main guys out there cheerleading and getting those guys up and getting those young cats playing. Yeah, I mean, and it's great to see when you see a veteran like that who's had some up and down career because of injury and still out there enjoying and loving the game and spreading it to the young cats, and it makes those young cats want to play hard for them, because I know I always did as a young player to play for the older guys, especially if they were really into it and really cared about their craft and loved the game, and it's great to see that. We just need a little bit more on the outside right now, especially with Chop. We need Chop to really turn the corner. He had a good, end of the season last year, but he's made some bad mistakes penalty-wise this year and some bad rushes. He needs to clean up.
Second team on the depth chart right now.
Huh?
He shouldn't be listed second team on the depth chart right now at this phase. It just shouldn't.
No, he shouldn't be. He should be the number 1 guy out there, and that's what they drafted him in the first round to do, right? I mean, that's what, if you're a first round, that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be out there causing havoc. You're supposed to be a speed rusher, a bendy guy, and all that. And we just need more out of him in his final 5 games.
And definitely, I'm glad you mentioned Chubb, because he was the guy that everybody was targeting, saying, get him out of here. His contract, this, the money, that. And it was obviously justifiable at the time for people to be saying that because the return wasn't there. But the leadership that he has shown since the deal was made, and he was, obviously not going to be dealt, and Jalen was. But then on top of that, Fitzpatrick. Those two guys in particular, I think since that trade deadline, the leadership, the elevation of their games, Minka's been great these last couple of weeks. And I think we've seen that, to Z's point, Kyle, the veteran guys who are still left over saying, all right, we need some leadership on this team. And they stepped up in a big way to do that for guys. And we've seen their play. I mean, Dotson and Brooks have been unbelievable.
Yeah, I can't say enough about the job Minka Fitzpatrick's done probably the last month of the season and how good he's been. And it was a starring role in this win against New Orleans with obviously first career sack, which is pretty fun because I remember back in training camp, it was twice a week. You know, you'd sit there and you watch the guys warm up, and it would be Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, and Minka Fitzpatrick working on their pass rush technique with each other. And, you know, a guy who's a DB who's never had a sack in his career to be doing that in year 8, year 9 in training camp and taking that time and working with the pass rushers. And it was the drill with the one long arm where you're working on the strip and you're attacking the football and turning the corner. And what'd he do on Tyler Shuck? The exact thing he was working on in training camp in August was the thing he utilized for the first time to get his first career sack and force a turnover. So like a little thing like that, seeing how he handled himself in the summertime in prep, knowing that that's not his game, that's not really where he's been used, and then seeing it manifest is really cool. And I think there's some learning lessons for the young guys to take note of a guy like that who handles himself like that. You just never know. Be prepared for anything. And he's playing great ball now that they've got him living a little bit more down in the nickel and closer to the line of scrimmage. And he's a player who I know he's under contract for a large dollar amount next year. I hope they figure it out with, because I'd really like to see him back next year with how he's playing.
Yeah, man, what an inspiring force he has been out there on that field. And guys, it's that time. We're right up against the end of the show. Obviously, the Dolphins are favored to win against the Jets, and Miami's on that win streak. They've won 3 in a row and 4 out of 5. So let's put you on the hot seat. I'll go first, and I'll say that I think the Dolphins get it done. I've been teeter-tottering on this. I even told Z before the show I have a bad feeling about the Jets this week. But I think after hearing you guys and taking in the sounds and the sights of the Dolphins Squad Show, I've changed my mind. I think the Dolphins are going to run it down the Jets' throats. They're going to minimize Tua's mistakes, which they've been doing. And the more we talk about the Jets, they have no chance to stop the Dolphins' run game. And they haven't been relying on the run much offensively themselves. The carries for Breece Hall have been going down. I don't think they have any confidence as an offense. Obviously, their starting quarterback is benched, and you're not getting much from Taylor either. So I don't think the Jets are going to score a lot of points. Are they going to be the team that puts 20 up on the Dolphins defense when their opponents are being held to 14.5 per game on the win streak, 4 out of 5, not just the 3? No, they're not going to be the ones to do it. So just by virtue of what Kyle talked about on the line of scrimmage, that's where the Dolphins win this game. They beat the Jets up, and they do it up front, and they leave with a victory.
Yeah, I think Miami will pull this one out in a close game. I don't see it as Miami, blowing them up there, because again, divisional game up there, cold weather. I get all that. I think, and the Jets are playing, good football. I mean, they're inspired football. They're playing hard for, their head coach. He's motivated them. He's got them playing after all the big trades that we talked about earlier. For the Jets, I think they're going to come out. They're going to play good football early. We just got to weather the storm like you always do on the road, and come back and then grind it out. And I think, we, even the defense, are going to, stifle Taylor and stop the run game. And I think we should get a couple turnovers and win.
Yeah, it's for me, I don't think the Jets defense has played well enough, especially since the trade deadline. Like, they're bottom 10 in the league in both pressure rate and defensive run performance. So I think they'll struggle unless Miami really shoots themselves in the foot. I feel good about the matchups that Miami has. I expect the Jets to play hard. I expect this to be probably a 1-score game sometime midway through the second half, early fourth quarter. And I like the Dolphins to make that big play in a big moment, and make sure that they come back to Miami after week 14 and they're 6-7 and feeling good about a 4-game win streak.
Yeah, and the Jets they score 20.5 points a game. So this is the one we've been pointing to, the one we've been circling. Win those games and get to the Pittsburgh game, and then look at what's happening in Pittsburgh, guys. all kinds of trouble happening in the Steel City. Mike Tomlin's on the hot seat now. So we'll worry about that game, though, after this one. We'll be here right after Jets Dolphins on Sunday, and the kickoff is it's a 1 p.m. game. So we'll be here right after that game with the Reax, and hopefully they keep it going. I mean, look, this team was 1-6 at one point, guys. 1-6. And so the Dolphins have a chance to pull to within a game of 500 and do it in New York against the Jets. Can't wait for that one. We'll be here right after. For Z, for Kyle, and for all of you, thank you for doing what you do in the chat and keeping us going in there, as well as everyone at the #1 podcast network, the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for being here for your Dolphin Squad show. Until Sunday, keep your game tight, your mind right, and yeah, go Fins.